Humans of the cardboard, gotcha again. We're doing another video talking about Terminal World, the new set upcoming. We've got 2 archetypes fully revealed as far as their 4 cards of support. I've come back on my situation of me saying they could get 1 more card of support. Looking at the way that the 4 cards of support are listed in the set, I don't think they're actually going to get more cards of support, so I'm sorry if I got your hopes up. I even said, though, like, don't get your hopes up. It's nice if you do, but don't worry about it. I don't think there's going to be more, so I'm expecting 4 cards for the 2 other archetypes. Today, we're talking about LSWARMS. Really, really interesting archetype because it actually was a competitive archetype at one point a handful of years ago. Not tier 1, but like a really respectable, anti-meta strategy that kind of effed with, I believe, Dragon Ruler at its peak. So really interesting archetype. So let's get into this thing. Let's go through everything we're talking about here. Okay, I'm getting a bunch of whatever. New update to Windows. Okay, LSWARM. We had to talk about the cards that they have that are actually solid, and then we're going to talk about what they're missing and what I'd like to see from the support should they end up being one of the archetypes in here. Now, I think it's important to note that LSWARM is interesting because they have 2 different archetypes that share the same name. There's a lot of cards out there that note specifically LSWARM. It's just LSWARM. You can see it in this guy's text here, right? LSWARM. That's so, like, because there's 2 archetypes, they could do one of those things where, like, kind of like Constellar, Teller Knight, you make cards that kind of help both at the same time. I could see that giving them an extra leg up as being one of the archetypes to be chosen. Anyway, let's get into it. Let's talk about the cards they have that are decent. First off is Caster, sorry. He's okay. I mean, we talked about a Ritual Beast in the last video. They have Elder. This is just Elder. During the turn this card is normal summoned, you get an additional normal summon for an LSWARM monster. It's nothing crazy, but it just helps you extend. It's fine. Next up we have Karikion. This card kind of has a lot going on. So while this card is in the graveyard, if it was sent there that turn, you get an additional you can normal summon an LSWARM monster for 1 less tribute. That really doesn't matter that much because the high-level LSWARM monsters are not that good. They're just honestly not worth playing, so that effect doesn't really matter. But you can also banish 1 LSWARM monster from your graveyard to target an LSWARM monster in your grave and add it back to your hand. Also, this card gains as effect. This turn, you can activate this turn, normal summon an LSWARM monster. So if you use his effect to banish an LSWARM monster to add another one back to hand, you then get an additional normal summons. You're getting one back to hand, and then you're normaling it for extension. Again, essentially just 2 monsters that give you additional normal summons. That's the main thing they're pushing. Next up here, we have another extender, Mandragora. If your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can just special summon this card. It's really only particularly good going second, but some of the Exceeds need specifically LSWARM monsters, and this could be a monster that matters a little bit more in that sense as an extender, specifically going second. But going first, obviously, it's not good. And then we have LSWARM Thunderbird. I actually just think this card is interesting. I'm not even sure if it's actually good or not. During either player's turn, when a card or effect is activated, you can banish this card, and then during the next standby phase, you summon this card back, and it gains 300 attack. It's nothing crazy, but it tags out, and, if they built effects around it, if a LSWARM is banished, if a LSWARM or whatever, this could be something. But the fact that it just kind of tags out is kind of annoying to deal with. And interesting. We'll give it that at least. I don't think it's amazing, though. They would have to really build around it to make it worth it. And the last card here is Steel Swarm Cell. This is the only card I could actually see from the Steel Swarm archetype actually being interesting for the LSWARMs, because he just says if you control no monsters, special summon this card. So it is just a free extender. There is a link 2 that LSWARMs can kind of abuse. So this guy kind of just helps you extend into that. He's not a good level to make rank 4, so that's the downside to him. But he does let you get to the link 2 at least. And also, like, if they were going to give this archetype support, they could just give him a link 1. It's one of those archetypes that's bad enough where a link 1 may be the solution. We'll see. And moving on to the spells. The only spell I think that's actually interesting is Infestation Pandemic. All face-up LSWARM monsters you control currently are unaffected by other spell or traps this turn. It's not an amazing effect, but we've already seen, even this calendar year, Kashtira start playing, is it Forbidden Lance? I think is the one that essentially does the same thing. Makes target 1 monster on the field. It becomes unaffected by spell or traps till the end of the turn. it's essentially that, and it's searchable in the archetype. So very interesting. If this deck's game plan becomes end on Ophion against certain decks in the format, this card can be the difference between stuff like Book of Moon, Book of Eclipse, Droplet, whatever, being an out. So that actually could be kind of clutch. And then some traps. The traps are actually kind of clean. This card is literally, what's that card called? The Altergeist Continuous Trap. Before that continuous trap. This card says, once per turn, shuffle an LSWARM monster from your hand or face-up field into the main deck to add an LSWARM monster from deck to hand. All they have to do is make anything akin to Multi-Faker. It doesn't have to be as good as Multi-Faker, but anything that's like sort of a hand trap on the opponent's turn, jumps out of the hand on the opponent's turn. The only problem with this card is it's slow. But as long as they give any card that kind of plays on the opponent's turn for LSWARMs, this card immediately becomes like a really interesting card for the deck, because obviously the value it adds turn after turn after turn to, you know, kind of like push the strategy is pretty strong. So you got to like that. And the last card for the traps is Terminus, Infestation Terminus. Target an LSWARM monster you control and 2 cards your opponent controls. Banish your monster, and if you do, return the second targets to the hand. It's pretty good. It's just a searchable Icarus attack type card, but instead of destroying, it bounces, and instead of tributing your monster, it banishes it. So some interesting attributes there for that card. Again, if the strategy gets like a really good searcher, really good engine cards, this and this could be pretty good search targets for the deck to set up turn 1 for sure. And then into the extra deck. So we have Steel Swarm Origin. This is a Steel Swarm card, but it can make use of any 2 LSWARMs. It forces your opponent to special summon monsters from the extra deck to a zone this card points to, which is not amazing, but one part it is interesting in is he just has 1 arrow pointing up. So if your opponent summons once from the extra deck and they cannot clear that monster or use it as material to summon another monster, they cannot summon again from the extra deck, right? They have to summon to the zone he points to, which kind of can be a weird lock for certain decks. And then also, while this card points to a monster, neither player can target it with card effects. Also, it can't be destroyed by battle or card effects, so it does give nice protection to certain stuff. And then once per turn, when a monster on the field is destroyed by battle or card effects, any monster, special summon a level 4 or lower LSWARM monster from your deck in defense position up to the number destroyed. So, again, any monster on the field, any monster this card, actually just on the field, period, summoned from deck. So it's actually not a bad card. It's got 3 interesting effects, a sort of floodgate effect, a protection effect, as well as a float effect for your field in general. It's actually not a bad card. I actually do think it could come up if the engine got pushed enough. From there, we have Ophion. This is the main card that made this deck good versus Dragon Ruler. It says, while this card has Exceed material, level 5 or higher monsters cannot be special summoned, period. And then once per turn, you can attach a material from this card to add an Infestation spell or trap from your deck to your hand. This card is insane. This card is not only like a nasty floodgate for like certain decks, and then also it's just search a card. Search any spell or trap in your deck. So good. This card is actually crazy, for sure. Bahamut. This card can attach a material to target a monster your opponent controls, discard an LSWARM, and then you take control of the opponent's monster. Only downside to this card is that you have to discard an LSWARM, so you do have to give up hand advantage, but that's still not a terribly bad effect, especially since it only takes 2 level 4 LSWARMs. Definitely doable. Nightmare. Evilsword Nightmare. You've seen this card play in certain decks actually over the years. It's a double Book of Moon, and that's it. It's pretty good. Steel Storm Roach. Whenever somebody would inherently special summon a level 5 or higher monster, so like a synchro summon or a main deck monster that inherently summons via its effect that's level 5 or higher, you can just negate the summon and destroy it. That's not once per turn, so actually pretty good against certain matchups. Just another card to keep in mind. Evilswarm Ouroboros. This card takes 3 level 4 monsters, but it has 3 different effects that are actually pretty good. The first one targets a card your opponent controls and bounces it, sends a random card from their hand to the graveyard, or targets a card in their graveyard and banishes it. So even though it's not inherently insanely powerful for the investment you give into it, the versatility of this card could still make it playable if the deck is just a rank 4 engine that kind of just pumps them out. So that's cool. Plus, he's one of the few that doesn't need specifically LSWARM monsters as material, so you could actually potentially play other engines to extend you into more level 4s and make this guy via those, for sure. And then Exciton Knight, I believe, is the last one we have here of any interest. He just has LSWARM in the name, so he has synergy with some of the other cards in the archetype, but he is generic, so he is sort of a going second tool for the deck no matter what. All in all, though, there are some tools here. I do think this deck lags behind a lot. I think the biggest thing is this deck cannot put multiple monsters on the field consistently in modern-day Yu-Gi-Oh!, at least not consistent enough. So they either would have to give them the type of cards where they really need to push the engine. I think that's the first and foremost. Honestly, the extract's not even that bad at all. There's enough generic extract cards that are decent. You know, there's enough, you know what I mean, extra tools there, but also, like, once you know the matchup, okay, you make Ophion if it's really good. Okay, we make Nightmare if it's insanely good. Roach, certain matchups. And then going second, you already have Exciton, Ouroboros, and Bahamut. So, like, the deck kind of has going first and second tools in the extract that aren't even that bad. The deck just needs an engine. And because your best extract monsters require LSWARMs specifically, we need some better monsters. So I know I've said this in a multitude of videos talking about support for archetypes. This archetype really feels like it needs its own Exosister Malfa. Something to that effect, or Multifaker, something like that, where it can summon itself and another monster from deck, just basically. And even if it can do it on the opponent's turn, even better, because then you're also making not only a really good card for the deck, but then also a card that Infestation Infection makes way better as well. Like, it makes this card way better in the archetype, because you're able to search it out and do its thing on the opponent's turn and kind of, you know what I mean, just kind of flood into more resources. That's really cool. But yeah, they're going to need that. They probably need some boost in consistency. They wouldn't need just a Malfa card, because if they got a card like Malfa, that's a nice help to them. But I don't think they're all the way there consistency based yet. So they would probably also want something to boost consistency, some kind of Searcher, E-Tele, whatever type of card to kind of like just find the best card in the deck more consistently. This deck is giving me Exosister vibes like crazy. Not necessarily in that it's supposed to be really good versus graveyard deck specifically or any of that stuff, but just that some of the monsters just feel like really meh, and they kind of need like a really centralizing good main deck monster, a good consistency tool like Exosister Pax, and then the deck just has some pretty good stun tools to kind of lock certain decks, especially once you know what they are straight up out of the game. I mean, if you could end on Ophion or Nightmare, and depending on what you know what your opponent's playing, or Roach even, one of those three, I guess you'd never really be ending on Roach, because you would just choose to end on Nightmare or Ophion instead. So you could choose to end on Nightmare or Ophion plus the trap. That's actually pretty nasty, or at least like another monster plus the trap. That way you could leave Ophion up. Still, I guess Ophion just searches this. Oh, that's why it's good. Okay, so like if the goal is just get to Ophion plus another body, and then Ophion searches Terminus as far as your turn one board. Or if you already have Terminus, you search Infection, and then you're already set for the grind as well. There's some legit tools here. I think there's some really cool things. The monsters are lacking, and the spells are lacking. You've got two solid traps, a good interruption trap and a good engine trap, but all you have is a like protection spell. We need more there to add speed to the deck to be able to have consistency and do it faster, and then the monsters to keep up. They could also make another Exceed that does something else. I have no idea. I guess they could make something that's like a little bit more, I don't even know. I guess maybe more versatile, because like Nightmare's going to be good versus certain matchups, but really not great versus others. Like Branded just like cooks this card, but like also decks like Pearly just cook this card. So like depending on which one you're going for, you kind of get cooked. That's definitely something to keep an eye on. But I'd be curious to see what the deal is. So that's my overall consensus. It's got to be main deck help. It's got to be engine help, getting us to those extra monsters, because they're not even that bad. I'm sure they'd like to make one more extra monster just cause. But I think really the help needs to come in the form of at least like 2 monsters, 1 spell, or 1 monster, 2 spells, but the spells better be pretty insane engine spells. And then we can start looking at some interesting stuff here. But yeah, that's what I think for LSWARMS. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you ever played this deck during Dragon Ruler format, or even just really love the deck and have been waiting for a long time for support, let me know what you think about this video. Let me know what you think about my thoughts and where I'm on it, as well as like where you think. What do you think the deck needs that may be different from me down the line? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you so much for watching, though. Otherwise, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff from your boy down the line, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.